So thank you all so much for being here. And before I begin, I would like to acknowledge a comment that was made after our last meeting by one of our students, one of our fellow students in the class, who said that they, in light of all of the events that are happening nationwide and worldwide right now, that they were really struck by last week's class about white privilege and how privileged we all are to have this opportunity to come together, have a fat lunch, throw our stuff in the trash, all this stuff that we're just so fortunate to be able to have this opportunity, and even to play with the plants, all of these things. Mm-hmm. And that so much of our privilege is really built upon the fact that Native people here lived for years and wild harvested and lived in harmony with the land, and then taught people who came and tortured them how to use these plants that they used as medicine and food. And also all of the slaves from Africa that were brought here and really are the foundation of our agriculture here in the United States. And so I just would like to take a moment and acknowledge the backbone of agriculture in this country and herbalism, and those people who often are not seen and not acknowledged, and also gratitude to our fellow student for bringing that to my attention. And just to hope that all people have access to the plants in their community and the wisdom of their lineage, and that we can celebrate these things together and work together to create more unity and rights for everybody. So thank you all for listening and for being here, and I know you all share the same heart, and so thanks for that. And so now we get to have a lot of fun with herbs and dairy. And so some of these things, like this lineup here, are not really pasture herbs. These are culinary herbs, but because culinary herbs pair very well with dairy, I brought these for sort of our hands-on, let's work with the medicine part of our class. And we're going to make an herbal butter. I also was hoping to make an herbal cheese. However, I am having technical difficulties and was unable to get that message across, conveyed in a way that allowed the dairy friends to appropriately respond. Fortunately, Amy had a whole bunch of cheese in her fridge, so we are going to make an herbal cheese. And if we're going to make an herbal butter, like an herbal quark like we had for lunch, or an herbal chev, which is delicious, we would do much the same thing that we're going to do now. One thing that would be different that I won't do with the butter that I would do with an herbal cheese is I would add a little bit of olive oil on top of the herbs, just to kind of integrate it, and can never add too much fat to your food, so for that too. And there were some questions about the quark, so I wanted to send those questions over to Karen, because she introduced me to quark and is a expert quark maker. And Karen, would you like to talk a little bit about quark and what that is? And
it's just a German name for a soft lactic ferment cheese. I mean, it's called by many different names, but since I'm married to a man named Adolf von Gontard, it's quark in our house.
So to begin this portion of class, because it's going to take a minute for us, I brought mullein. I'm featuring mullein as our superstar of the day. Mullein will grow in your pastures. I have had places where I've lived that did not have mullein, and then I just go to wild places and find mullein that has flowered and gone to seed, and take one of those beautiful candlesticks and just shake it around my land, and then I have plenty of mullein for the rest of my life until I move.
And our children's life.
And so I at my place in Crawford, the weeds are the things that do best up there. And so I have a lot of mullein up there. So this is from the Apothecary Gardens in Crawford on the Black Canyon Road. And I can't say enough about mullein as a remedy, especially for respiratory issues, which are so prevalent. And obviously respiratory issues are one of the things in COVID that is causing the most concern. And so, so I have used mullein for many, many years. And when I was living in places where I didn't have a garden, like when my kids were little, I would just go out and wild harvest it. And then from Emily, learning about the different times you can harvest it. I used to just kind of get it in the fall, and then Emily was like, the goats are really eating the mullein now. And realized, wow, the mullein has such a sweet taste at that time earlier in the season when the goats are really enjoying it. And that's just before those candle stalks come out, when those buds are forming. And so, so this is the early harvest of mullein from this year, and I will, continue to harvest throughout the season. Anyway, there's a variety of ways that we can utilize mullein, and we're going to get to experience that today in class. And so the first way that I'm going to pass around some mullein is we're just going to have straight mullein infusion, so that you can taste what the infusion tastes like just by itself. And it's very pleasant. All of my children will drink it just like this, plain and simple. Oh. However, when I'm straining mullein, I do add an additional cheesecloth because it does have all those fine hairs. And so we just want to, definitely when you harvest it yourself, it's better. When you get the cut and sifted stuff, there's a lot of those fine hairs. So if you are purchasing mullein that's already processed, like cut and sifted, then definitely double strain it, because the fine hairs ruin the pleasant experience that mullein can provide. So you can see we're just pouring it off. And so mullein leaf is the part that we're using for the respiratory system. Mullein root has a great affinity for our urinary system, so especially like bladder control, strengthening the urinary tract and the urinary system, the mullein root can be used for that. And then the mullein flowers are semi-famous as an ear remedy. So when children have an earache, you can use an oil that has been infused with mullein flowers and just warm that oil up a little bit and put some drops in the children's ears. And if you want to up it a little bit, you can do 40% mullein flower oil, 40% St. John's wort flower oil, and 20% garlic oil. And combine all of those oils together. And if someone's having an earache, you just warm that in like a water bath. And I just keep it in like a tincture bottle and then make a small pot of water and warm that water up and put the oil in. And then I like test it out on my sensitive spots, and when it's a good temperature, just put a few drops in the ear. And I have had children wake up in the middle of the night screaming with earache, and just one dose, maybe 5 drops in their ear, and they're back to sleep, and I don't hear about the earache again. Excellent remedy, yes. 20% garlic oil, so we're taking cloves of garlic and infusing those in olive oil. 40% St. John's wort flower oil, and 40% of the mullein flower oil. And the mullein flower, even if you have a bounty of mullein like I do, it is a thing to harvest because they come one at a time. So there's like this long candle with, that's the flower, and the flowers open like one by one on the candle. And so, what I do is I just get a jar, put oil in it, and then keep adding the flowers day by day until you have the oil saturated flowers. And really, really outstanding remedy that I highly recommend for your medicine bundle.
How long do you infuse the flowers in there for?
I would infuse them again 6 weeks, sort of our regular dose. However, if it's an acute situation like, say it came up that someone was having this go on and it was this time of year and you had access to the flowers, you could also double boil, and so have a pot of water and then another pot on top that you could have the oil and just slowly warm that, and then that could go a little faster. But I do the 6 week and then strain it off.
One other thing to note about using garlic mullein oil or any of the mix that Alicia was saying is if a kid does have something happening with their ear, and we think it's an earache and we apply it, just make sure that that ear doesn't have fluid draining out of it. Because if an eardrum ruptures, then organic material like plant oil can definitely cause a worsening middle ear infection.
Thanks, Pat.
So just make sure that the eardrum's intact, and the way to do that is just have the kid turn their head over and then take just a little piece of cotton ball, not a Q-tip, a little piece of cotton ball, and swipe this little well right here. If it's dry, you're good. Okay? Because if an eardrum's ruptured, that fluid is thin at the beginning, like water, and it will fill this little ear. So just make sure it's not ruptured. And the other thing is, if it is ruptured and you can't tell that, and you put oil in it, the kid will howl, because it hurts bad to go into a hole. So just be careful with that part initially.
Great, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to pass the mullein infusion around. There's some extra cups over here if you don't have one. If you do have one, fantastic. I'm going to sort of skip
Swag
ahead
that back.
to our next
Don't mix
our
it
next
with.
mullein preparation, which actually will be the third one that we'll try, which is going to be a mullein chai. And so what we're going to do with the mullein chai is take the milk and warm the milk with some herbs. I just got some really rudimentary chai herbs for our mullein milk, our mullein chai milk, and would like to sort of stress the many benefits of milk as a medicine, kind of like Emily was saying earlier about how when animals are well cared for, they're out enjoying healthy pasture, and when they're enjoying healthy pasture, their milk contains all of those medicinal benefits that the pasture contains. Your comfrey, your plantain, your alfalfa, your yellow dock, all of these things, comfrey if they're lucky, but all of these things that are available in the pasture are available as a remedy in milk by itself. I was in class with Susan Weed one time, and someone said, if you could only have one herbal remedy, what would it be? And she said goat milk, because my goats eat all of the herbs that I want. So this is a good thing to think about. The reason why homeopathic remedies are captured in those white lactose pills is because they are pretty non-reactive for most people. I know some people do have dairy allergies. However, it's a pretty simple food for our bodies to use and digest. So a great way to, when you have animals like these women do that are very well tended and have very healthy lives, that you have a medicine in and of itself with the milk. But then also, because the milk has fat, it's able to carry fat-soluble compounds out of plants. And so this is a great way for us to infuse herbs in milk and then have those herbs be available as a herbal remedy that is very palatable, so that elders who maybe aren't getting a lot of nutrition can get a lot of nutrition out of the milk, and then also the herbs that are blended with them. And as Emily was saying earlier about feeding animals, you can get animals who are ill and maybe wouldn't otherwise take herbal infusions to take herbal infusions when they're half and half with milk. And also little children, when they're going from breast to infusion, you can half and half the infusion with breast milk for them to kind of get that taste for the infusion. But if you, like, say someone is like bottle feeding or doesn't have a lot of extra breast milk, isn't pumping, you could use animal milk. We've seen many healthy, beautiful babies raised on Emily's goats, and so a way to introduce the herbs to those children who are enjoying animal milk is half them with the milk and the infusions. So that's all very good. So I'm cutting this ginger. Like I said, it's going to be a really rudimentary chai. I have this ginger, and then I have a little bit of fenugreek, some cinnamon, and some vanilla from Mexico. So you can do whatever kind of herbs you want. This is kind of a way to just spice up the mullein. What do you all think of it? How is it tasting? Yeah, easy going. And so abundance. Do you all have some mullein in your life?
So are you chopping up the stalk? Is that what the tea is? Or is it
No, what
Ginger.
I'm chopping up ginger, so I'm making. We're,
oh, no, I meant for the mullein.
Oh no, so what I've got here, this was sort of the earlier harvest, so I harvested leaves and dried them, and then as I put them into the jar, I just crushed them with my hands and dropped them in the jar.
What was the, I heard ginger, cinnamon, vanilla.
Fenugreek. But, you know, if I had nutmeg, I was wishing I had nutmeg, I would definitely have thrown that in. You could do cloves, you could, you know, whatever, cardamom's amazing, all of that stuff that you would put in chai, you can put in your mullein chai. And hip hip hooray, fun ways to use herbs.
Right.
Love it. Okay, so we got that in there, so let's put some milk.
And I'm going to give a plug for fenugreek. Fenugreek is an amazing cover crop. It likes cool soils, so it's best if you kind of get it going in the spring. But once you get it going in the spring, it will take some heat in the summer. But the aroma of fenugreek growing in any ground is
Amazing.
it's amazing. You won't be able to keep your animals out of it. So
And-
you gotta keep it protected from your animals because they
And
love it.
it's also a fantastic fertility herb. And one of the things that I've noticed is that when I'm drinking a lot of fenugreek tea, my body odor begins to smell something like maple syrup. And so I wonder if it has some kind of impact on the pheromones, which is why it might be such a fertility herb. Anyway, a fun herb to enjoy, and also good for milk production. So it's a great herb. And you see, I'm just like, you know by now how I do it. I'm just kind of like, okay, and cinnamon, I'm just gonna pour that in there. And there we go. We're gonna let that heat up, and after it heats up, we'll add some honey. But did our pitcher come back?
Yep.
Good. So next round. Oh, I'm gonna have a little. Did you get some?
No, I didn't. Let me get my bottle.
Pat, what's a benefit of fenugreek as a cover crop? Does it fix nitrogen?
Yep. If it fixes nitrogen, but more so, it's a good competition plant for weeds
Oh, cool.
because it kind of spreads out. Yeah, it's lovely that way.
So the next remedy that we're gonna make with mullein is mullein milk. And so mullein milk is essentially 50-50 mullein and milk. And milk is also amazing for the respiratory system, sort of like how we've talked about the linden having that mucilage that coats and protects the respiratory and digestive system. Milk has a similar sort of coating and soothing effect on our bodies, and so milk is a great thing for our lungs, and so is mullein. And so the combination of the two is really great, and we're going to give it a try.
You say it's like a myth that milk makes you build up more
Mucus. Some people say that, and those people, it may be true for some people that it does, because it is mucilaginous and mucilaginous mucus. However, mucus is not the problem. Mucus is actually the solution. Mucus is helping to get things out of our body that we don't want in there. It's actually helping to move things along. So the fact that milk is mucilaginous, in my mind, is not a problem. It's part of the solution and helping our bodies to do that. Some people, you know, like, I'm not negating, some people definitely have dairy allergies, and And so and maybe have like phlegmatic conditions to where they may have excess mucus in their body anyway, that may get aggravated by ingesting milk. And I believe that that is a thing, but I also really think that when we're having a lot of phlegm and excess mucus, that it's an indication of something else that's going on. It's not like that's the big problem. Of course, that's a great point. That's a great point.
Well, A1
Huge
and
difference.
A2 milks are completely
A2 is what we're drinking today, and so exactly when we're having pasteurized milk that's coming from the grocery store, that's coming from a factory farm, what are we ingesting? What kind of energy are we bringing into our body? What kind of grief and terrible life are we taking into our own cellular system? And then when we have these cows that are raised in paradise who are eating medicinal herbs and who are treated really well and are really producing a medicinal quality product, how different that is in our body. And so, yes, I would never, I just wouldn't buy milk if it was in that form of, from a factory farm and not organic. And so we're really very fortunate that we have the blessing in this valley to have A2 cows that are biodynamically raised and, have Alberto and Karen and 80 and everybody loving them. So we are really lucky to get the goods. What? Not so much. He likes his cows.
dogs.
He likes his dogs. Okay, so here we go with this.
And also for people who do have trouble with milk, goat's milk is often a lot easier to digest. It has less lactose per whatever, less. It's just easier. For some people.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. And some people who can't drink grocery store milk can drink raw milk, even from a cow. And so it's just one of those things that I think because our modern industry has taken a product that's very pure and nurturing and turned it into a commodity that's being raised in a way that is lacking consciousness and love, then what happens is that our bodies react. And so I think that it's totally valid that people have reactions to milk.
It's also true to get your head around the fact that the people who are having a reaction to it are actually the healthy ones, because their bodies are sensitive to it, and their bodies are saying no to these basically poisons that we're constantly, like Cheetos.
Right, exactly.
Right.
The body's saying no, whether it's skin rashes or respiratory illness or leaky gut or any of those things. Our bodies are actually telling us no, don't have this food. And when they get on really good healthy food and give your system time to heal and your immune system to go up, then you find that you can eat real food, just not like
I used to have these protocols that I would do for kids that came in with eczema. And the parents would be convinced that the reason they had eczema was because they had a dairy allergy. And I'd go, yeah, I'll grant you that. So let's get them cleaned out. So we'd clean them out with aloe and, fructosaligoids that are food for the good bacteria in your body. Anyways, just a long protocol that we'd go through. And then I would say, now we're going to introduce dairy. And the parents would freak out, No, they're going to get sick again. Oh, my God. And I'd say, yeah, well, you trusted me this far. Let's try it, And we'd start them on goat to begin with. And they would take in goat milk, half and half with water. Pretty good. Then they'd go full goat milk. Pretty good. And then the real test was putting them on whole milk, finally down the line, whole milk, raw milk. And the real challenge was then, you've got to stay on this because I'm going to prove to you that if you give them homogenized, pasteurized milk from the store, I don't care if it's organic, doesn't have any, hormone, the second they would put those kids back on that, it would be flared right up again. So what Alicia and Karen are saying is that, it mostly has to do with reintroducing an enzymatically complete product. Because pasteurization and homogenization, I don't care what kind of milk it is, it's goat, cow, sheep, I don't care what. If you do those two things to it and then drink it, the enzymatic reaction that you need to have in your body to digest it has been removed, right?
Contrary to popular belief, the homogenization is more dangerous than the pasteurization. Pasteurization just kills everything. But the homogenization breaks the globules down into such minute particles that they permeate the cell walls. They permeate the intestinal walls before they're digested. So milk can be a very healthy food. You can drink it and thrive on it, but inject it into your veins and you die. And that's basically what they're doing by the homogenization. They're making it so that it's permeable into your system and then it's a poison. So we're doing that. And then the ultra high temperature pasteurization is like another whole step in the wrong direction. But the most dangerous part of it is the homogenization.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
Right, what's the point? And then one other thing I would like to
more
acknowledge
healthy
is
looking to me.
seeing some elders who have lived very long lives coming to the end of their lives, and milk being pretty much the primary food that they're enjoying. And so taking note of that we come in with milk, we go out with milk, and it can, when with right practices, we can really enjoy this as a food and medicine lifelong, if we choose. Okay, so we got this going. We have this pitcher halfway full of mullein infusion. Now we're gonna top it off like something is floating. It's a piece of mullein, it's okay, but we're gonna try and get it out. Okay, it wants to stay in there. Someone, if you get the mullein leaf in your mullein milk, you can make a wish. Okay, so we're going half and half here, and we can do another round. So, so if you'd like to enjoy this, feel free, and we can give it a little spin.
I like it.
You would like to
I
serve?
like to
That
get
would
to
be
be
great.
the milkmaid.
You can be the milkmaid, and you can go bigger cups on this so that we can make another batch. And actually, we can just make another batch here while she's going.
Hey Karen, what's the difference between A1 and A2 cows?
It's a chromosome difference. So it's the casein proteins in the milk, and the A1 cows are mostly here in America is A1 cows. The A2 cows are more frequently, they're the light-colored breeds, they're Jerseys, they're Guernseys, the ones from the Northern Isles. They're also some of the African breeds. But about, I don't know, maybe 20 or 30 years ago, some researchers in New Zealand started looking at the differences in the milk allergies and all the health implications. I mean, high blood pressure and heart disease and all the things that are often associated with milk and milk products. And they discovered that the people had negative impacts and negative health outcomes from A1 milk, but not from A2 milk. So about, well, more than that, maybe 30 or 40 years ago now, they outlawed A1 cows in all of New Zealand and Australia.
Yeah.
And gave them a period of time. The government said, you gotta convert your herd to A2 by this time.
Wow.
And it's catching on more here in America than, slowly, but there's still not been enough controlled research to actually say emphatically.
Yeah.
I can say it because I have a number of customers who have cancer and irritable bowel syndrome and all kinds. I have 5 customers that cannot digest food if they're not drinking my milk or my yogurt. And that's why I had to run home, because there's a lady in Utah who she literally has to have the yogurt or she can't digest anything. I just know it from my customers. I don't have any of those problems. I can't. So I wouldn't know. But if you look it up, if you Google it, you'll see both sides. I I think it's true. There's a really good book called The Devil's in the Milk. And it was written by the researchers in New Zealand, and it explains everything about it. But it's basically, it's a difference in the numbers on the chromosome.
Interesting,
Yeah. So,
That produces a different type of casein or different
yeah, it
quantity?
does,
Is
it
that-
does. And so, the A2, if you can, and there's a company in Boulder that's called the A2 Milk Company. And they're distributing, just like in the supermarket, it's pasteurized and probably homogenized too, I can't remember, I'm sure it is. But, you know, it's regular milk carton, so now it's becoming a little bit more, recognized, I guess. But my whole herd is all A2s, my bulls are A2, everybody's A2s. So, and I still get them tested, I still do a genetic test on them, it has to go out to Stanford, and get a genetic test, even though I know that the bull and the mom are both A2. I know the baby's gonna be, but I still do it just so I have the document and have the certification, because I need to do that for a dairy. So, yeah, that's the difference.
Are you saying that all Guernsey and Jersey?
No, I'm saying that they are more predominantly,
Oh,
the A2 was more predominant in those light colored breeds or the northern breeds. But then, you know, things like Holsteins and Herefords and those, they're not.
Right.
They're far less likely. They could be bred that way over time, I suppose, but, you know, you gotta start somewhere, so it's, anyway, I'm just attached to jerseys. I wouldn't have a different kind of cow, because I love my jerseys, but, you know, that's me.
Does it impact the meat?
Huh?
Does it impact the meat, A1 or A2?
Yeah. I mean, it's mostly the milk casein, but, you know, it's in the whole cow, right? So the whole cow is a different makeup genetically.
Great. Thanks. Okay, so I'm gonna actually add the mullein infusion right into the milk here, into the chai spice, just so that it's all nice and warm. Oh, so let's get our strainer, our additional strainer. I have the temperature between medium and low, just so you know, and it's still kind of seared on the bottom, so so beware of that. What do you all think about the mullein milk? So good, good. There's more, so drink up. Pat, would you mind holding the strainer? Just don't want to drop everything into the chai, even though we're going to strain it again. And so I'm doing a chai kind of beverage, like heating the herbs in the milk and or making an infusion and cutting it with milk is really fantastic. And there's a lot of things that you can do in here. And so and a lot of people will drink chai before they'll drink an infusion or a cup of tea. And so some other things that I really enjoy sort of blending into chais are things like mushrooms, reishi mushrooms, cordyceps, things like dandelion root. Sky's the limit, really, but you can really zest up your chai by incorporating all those things, all of the weeds that we've talked about, burdock root, on and on. And then having the sweetness of those Ayurvedic type herbs can really help them to be more palatable and therefore easier for people who may not have the palate for herbs yet, or who are just kind of catching on to herbal medicine, or maybe haven't caught on, you're trying to sneak it. It's a good way.
Yeah, the chai is a good way to disguise bitters. You know, so burdock and dandelion, and that's kind of important when you're trying to get kids to develop that palate that Alicia was saying, is to make it palatable to begin with, and then you're not always fighting an uphill battle with them being willing and able to go down a medicinal road with you.
And if you do have children, just start adding herbs to the food that you cook at night. Start giving them nourishing infusions throughout the day, just like it's what you do, and you'll just notice that that's what you do after a while, and they're fine with it, you know, like once they get used to it, and if there's no stigma around, like this is weird, kids will really enjoy herbs, in my experience with a lot of different kinds of kids. And like I said, if the straight herbs too much, a little bit of milk and a spoonful of honey help the medicine to go down. Like we've talked about, the infusions really needing a long time to get their minerals and alkaloids into the water or the milk or whatever it is that we're, the alcohol that we're using as a menstruum. When we're using things like the fenugreek, the ginger, the cardamom, the cloves, these are high in volatile and essential oils, which move rather quickly into the water, and so, or the milk, or whatever it is that we're using. And so we don't need to steep forever. It's okay if you do. Like, I'll leave a pot on the stove of chai for, you know, a couple of days and add the milk later at that point. But I'll leave the chai pot on the stove for a while, and it's fine to do that. But you can also very quickly make this and get the essential oils that you're looking for with those spicier herbs. Okay, so as the chai is getting there, we're going to talk a little bit about butter, and the same thing that we like about milk and the fat and the nutrition and the goodness, we like that about butter too. And actually, personally, I like butter even more than I like milk. So it's a great vessel for delivering herbs. And so I really enjoy making an herbal butter, especially this time of year, kind of like the pestos that we talked about a few classes ago in May. You can use the herbal butter fresh, and you can also stick it in your freezer so that when you are preserving the fresh herbs in the butter, which will stay for a long time. I mean, herbal butter will last. It probably won't last because it'll get eaten, but it could last potentially in your fridge for a month or so because of the preservative qualities of the butter. But I also, like in this time of year when there's so many herbs, I'll make a big batch of herbal butter and then stick it in those sort of smaller size mason jars like this size here, or even those little tiny 4 ounces. And then it's such a treat in the winter time or when we don't have access to the fresh herbs to just be able to kind of bust out one of those little jars of herb butter, and yay, delicious. And so today we have a lovely variety of herbs from my garden, Pat's garden, and also Thistle Whistle Farm.
Where are you usually getting your butter base from?
Well, this butter base is from Karen's A2 cows, but you can, I don't have cows, so I go to the grocery store and buy the best butter I can find. Yeah. And also, like this butter, you'll see is very soft. So I leave the butter like on the counter to warm, so it's real mushy when the time comes to make the herb butter. And so here we have the hands-on portion of class. And if you would like to come, first of all, we'll just do a brief intro to the herbs. Here we have some oregano, beautiful Thistle Whistle Farm. You can use the flower as well as the leaf, and
it's very spicy.
It's spicy, it's delicious, and to prepare the oregano, what I would do would be kind of go down the thing like that, and then up for those little top flowers, and then, you know, just kind of down the row. And so there's oregano. And oregano, I'm sure you've all heard all of the, like, oregano is kind of a wonder herb right now. People are using the essential oil like it's going out of style. Not recommended. You can just use the same kind of oregano that we have in our garden and get those same antibacterial, antifungal, great effects from oregano that people are wanting out of the essential oil. And you can get this at a way lower cost in your backyard, free. And then you can also get it at a way lower cost to the environment because of the oregano oil. You know, essential oils are so consumptive of plant material, and so you can stretch your plant material a lot farther. And so with all of these herbs, the things that we've done in the other classes, herbal vinegars, herbal oils, tinctures, not usually so much with the culinary stuff, but lots of ways that we can enjoy these things and obtain the medicinal benefits that are touted for, kind of like more intense ways of using herbs like essential oils. We also have some garden sage here. So this is the one we were talking about, which is in salvia. This is a mint family herb. This is a beautiful, beautiful herb. It helps to dry us out, so people who are concerned about those sort of mucus problems, this is a great antidote, and also just helps us to really feel good. Also great memory herb, a wonderful herb for elders. We made herbal honey last time we met 2 weeks ago, and this makes a delicious herbal honey, kind of same thing as we did last time. You could like chop this up and put it in the honey, and then just take a spoonful of that honey into hot water, and then you have a delicious sage tea. But we're going to be using some sage in our butter today, and so there is our sage. And here we
Sage
have
tea is also great if you're trying to reduce milk production in animals or
point.
humans. So mommies who are, yeah.
Yeah, some moms have a lot of milk, and this is a good way to kind of quell that, or if you're weaning. I'm like, is it fennel? Is it
No.
dill?
So this
Here
is
we have dill.
And this is, some people know it as lemon spinach, but it's actually sorrel. And it's very, very lemony. So when I go to market, I take this, and I chiffonade, which is you roll it up and then you slice it across. And it's called lemon dill mix. And sometimes I put lemon balm in it also. Sometimes I put lemon verbena in it. Either way, it's lemon and dill of some sort. And you can use it as the topping for a salad. It just adds a really nice zing. Or you can mix it with sour cream and dip veggies in it or whatever. Or you can mix it in a vinaigrette and make it be salad dressing. And it's pretty and people love it. And
Delicious.
Delicious.
Nice combo.
Chives. Everybody knows what these are, right? Calendula. Just now starting to bloom. They're so delightful. And I use them, sometimes I use them whole, but most of the time I pluck the petals individually so that it sprinkles a beautiful orange all the way through. Later in the class we will likely make calendula oil because it will be on for sure.
Yeah, next month it's going to be a calendula party.
And cilantro flower is a really different taste than cilantro. So when your cilantro bolts, don't just cut it down. Eat the flowers. They're wonderful in salad. Let's see, parsley, Italian leaf parsley, cilantro, and then this little honey here is a very funny little thing called bronze fennel. It is not grown for the bulb. It's grown for this. And it's also grown for the tops, which are a beautiful umbel flower. And as they bloom, they put out this gorgeous yellow pollen that is the most intense, exquisite fennel taste. So bakers use it in pastries, sprinkle it on top like fairy dust. And so it's actually a pretty prized culinary herb. People, find it really valuable, and you sell it, and voila. And then there's just a ton of different things in here from the mint family. Lemon balm, basil, chocolate mint, spearmint, I don't know, bunch
Mint
of stuff.
party.
Bunch of stuff to play with.
There's a little more spearmint.
More
here.
mint.
Probably won't
Ooh,
do that
and
in a
this
couple
honey.
days.
Oh, a little nice bitter. Yeah, we have a bitter here. This is the mullet, or the mugwort
The
we were
mugwort
talking
that we were
about
talking about earlier. Is for
This is
deworming.
the variety that has the I call it a lion's claw leaf. It's like that, okay? And it's gray on the bottom. This is the stuff that can naturalize pretty easily, actually. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. This is bitter, really bitter herb, and it's great to sprinkle it in.
And also, this is a great one to make a herbal vinegar with. We really like that. And then also, often what I'll do with this is bundle it like a sage bundle, and use it as a smudge. Beautiful, beautiful aroma, and also again those purifying the space powers. But then also the mugwort, or also known as cronewort, Artemisia vulgaris, has dream enhancing properties. So if you're wanting to do some dream study or dream magic, this is a great herb to dry and put under your pillow. This is a great herb to burn as a smudge before you go to bed. Very lovely. And this is a new herb to me. It's called pipeche, and this came from Mark Waltermeyer. I encourage you all to give it a taste. It's lovely, fragrant, aromatic, and I don't really know that much about it, but it was on his list, and I was like, ooh, I don't know that one. I'm going to get it. So
That's why I gave it to you. I don't know it either.
No.
Can you spell it?
Pipeche.
Huh.
Yeah. So give it a try.
Yeah.
It's delicious.
And
And we have lavender from Stanton Farms
beautiful.
here, and we can take a few flowers off and add that into our butter. So the butter, you may have noticed from my infusion, my passion for infusions, I use a lot of herbs as singles, and that's a very great way for me to be in relationship with them on the day-to-day. But then, you know, like from time to time we want to party, and so we get together with a lot of our friends and throw down. And so that's what's going to happen in the butter today. We're going to add a large variety of herbs into our butter, and also it's happening in our chai over here. So while our chai is continuing to steep, so I've turned it down very low to 1. I'm going to add some honey in, just so that it has time to sort of integrate throughout the pot. And while that's all integrating and being introduced to each other, we could take our herbs. You can choose an herb of your choice, bring it back to your seat, and we have all sorts of tools. If you'd like a cutting board and to use a scissor, you can. We have some really good scissors that you can just snip them up. We don't want a lot of stem in our butter. We want to de-stem most of these things. Oh, and there's a little bit of thyme. Oh, we used a lot of thyme in lunch and dinner yesterday, but there is some thyme, which I love in herb butter. And so we're just going to want to get them off our plants, off of the stem, and then we'll want to cut them up and to remove the parts that do not look appealing, and just cut them up in little bits.
There's another really cool tool. It's called an ulu, right? And it's from the Inuits, and it's the coolest tool. And I have a teeny mini one at home, and it's a blade like this with a handle that comes around that you put your hand on, and then you just go you just rock it back and forth. And you can do the most amazing chiffonade with that tool.
Cool.
And I honestly can't remember where I came across it, but it's the most comfortable little tool. The blade is only about yay big, and then the handle just curves around it, and you're just rocking. And the herbs love to be cut with that particular blade because it's not stainless steel, and it's a forged iron blade, and they love that. They just loved being in contact with that. And I also have a stone knife. We didn't talk about this about wildcrafting before, but a stone knife is a really fine instrument for wildcrafting, because if you're an herb and you're growing wild in the mountains or wherever it is you're growing, and someone comes along with a stainless steel blade and hacks you off, you have no reference to where that came from in your environment whatsoever. But if someone comes along and whacks you off with a flint or a stone knife, you go, oh, okay, I mean, so you're first asking permission, but when you take that cutting with a stone knife, it's such a more gentle way to take an herb home with you as a wild crafting experience.
Great. So if you all would like to come up and choose an herb, obviously we only have this much butter. We're not going to need all of the herbs that are here, but feel free to process them because at your will, because we can integrate these things into, you know, we can put oil over them, we can add them to more butter, on and on. So, also garlic. We have some garlic, fresh, beautiful. I just love garlic this time of year. It's amazing. And so, plus all of its medicine that it brings. So we can also chop some garlic and add that into our butter as well. So please come and choose an herb of your liking and one that you want to become acquainted with, and give it a try in there.
Chop it up.
Yeah,
you can
we're
either
gonna
take
chop
it
cut.
home and put it in something you want, you know, at your house.
Yeah, you can take some home for sure. But let's get some in the, we'll use this as the bowl to collect it all at the end to mix our butter in. And if you want to take a little baggie or some of these other bowls, great. And then you can kind of put your stuff in there. Don't be shy.
Come on up. We have the mint pile.
Yeah, I'll get rid of the stems.
I wouldn't eat the stems in a herb butter.
Okay, fantastic. And so while you all are chopping, because I, of course, always really overplan for these classes, and I'm like, we can do some hands-on medicine making, and then we'll go out to the pasture and look at all the plants. And I'm like, okay, it's after 3. We're going to talk about some of the plants out in the pasture instead of going out and looking at them while y'all are doing some hands-on work. And I think we're almost ready to enjoy our chai. Oh, let's add the honey. So we have a lot of things that we've spoken about today as herbs that grow in the pasture, and we've talked about them in reference to animal health.
I would probably not tend to chop. I would just put them in
Yeah, I'd put the petals in whole
just
too.
whole. You can also put them in whole, but some people don't like the taste of the base, but they like the taste of the flowers.
Yeah, the petals are really sweet.
The calendula flowers before you make the oil?
It's way better with a fresh herb. However, then it's also going to be a lot more volatile in the oil because of the moisture. So you're going to want to check it. And some people will wilt them a little, like harvest in the morning and make the oil in the evening, but not entirely drying out before doing it.
Strategy of putting the flowers in the oil as you get them is not a good strategy for that.
If you can. If that's how they're coming,
to you, then that's what you
yeah,
do.
if that's how they're coming, that's what I would do.
But what I do is wilt them, and then once you wilt them, they're a lot easier to pull off of the base.
Oh, okay.
Because you can basically almost just do this, and they'll come off the base.
Is that really cool?
Yeah.
This is sorrel.
The sorrel in the pot. We're having this with the herb party. We're gonna combine that with all of the stuff.
Look
and
at you, pro.
I know.
I love how she cuts things. When we have dinners at the Grange, she's always the one that's like over there literally plucking off leaf by leaf on parsley. And
That's awesome.
like, Karen, how would you?
And there's a red bucket by Karen that's great for compost. Garlic's awesome. We'd love it.
Should we do something with the garlic?
Sure.
So, peel it all and chop it up.
Yeah. So one of the herbs that I wanted to mention was one that Dee Dee had mentioned earlier that is like kind of taking over in her garden or her pasture, which is the dock. And specifically, I would like to speak about yellow dock. And we can see this growing in Barry's garden over here in Karen's former pasture. And it's the one that is standing a little taller than the other weeds and has like a reddish brownish seed to it. And that's sort of an older one, and you can see younger ones along the side that are still real green. And yellow dock will grow in some pastures. It's in other pastures not so much. It's an indicator of iron in the soil, and it's also a great herb in our bodies because it helps us to release and utilize iron that may be stored in our body. Our livers will store iron, and sometimes people who are anemic or suffering from iron deficiency just need to sort of utilize their iron that they have and that they're getting a little bit better. And the yellow dock is a great remedy for that. So it's a great way to harvest the root and make a tincture, and you can just use small doses. And like if, say it's someone who's pregnant who is having anemia, I would just say maybe 1 to 3 times a day, taking a dropper full or anywhere from 10 to 30 drops of the yellow dock root tincture as a way to access and utilize the iron that is in their body and in their food more efficiently. And so this is something that you'll see like sometimes in waste areas, sometimes you'll see it growing a whole lot, sometimes you'll maybe not even see it at all. And it's a great herb. It's in the buckwheat family, and so the seed also has a lot of medicine as well. It's sort of an as above, so below. And so sometimes I'll take the seed of the yellow dock and incorporate that into my yellow dock root tincture. And so great herb that's in the pasture, a great sort of waste area herb that has a wonderful benefit for our body, and that I highly recommend as a medicinal for all phases of life. And so...
Do you experience cattle eating dock?
Dee Dee? No, it's going to seed, and it's, yeah. They're avoiding it. That's why Dee Dee has so much.
Yeah,
So,
I have a lot growing in my field,
Wonderful.
kind of in my waste field, and so I was very concerned about it. But then it's migrated to my neighbors, and he does his field with a sprinkler, and he does it in thirds, and his middle third became a dock field, and I felt
interesting.
really bad. I figured it came from me, and so now I'm very, very good about trying to, but it is very fastidious.
It can be, for sure. And then I, who love yellow dock and want to use it a lot because I have been anemic my whole life, it doesn't really grow in my pasture hardly at all. Like there's a little near the ditch that I'm like cultivating, and I even planted some in my garden, and it's like, meh. So it's one of those things.
But nettle grows with you.
What?
But nettle grows with you.
Nettle grows with me,
So
so I
there-
have another
ally.
ally for my iron issues.
Some other person comes along.
Exactly, exactly. So that's one of the things that grows in pasture that is really exciting. Plantain is another thing that grows in pasture that's a really exciting herb in my world. Plantain has incredible external benefits. It's a kind of herb that is known as a Band-Aid herb, and you can actually literally take those long, or sometimes they're round. There's the lance leaf, and then there's the Plantago major, which has like a round leaf, and you'll know them by their deep veins. I think there was some in one of these pasture grasses, actually. Anyway, because we're short on time, I'm just going to explain the plants, and then maybe another day we'll take a walk if you have questions. And the plantain is used as a Band-Aid plant. You can actually literally take it and wrap it around an owie with its stem and tuck the stem into itself and have a Band-Aid. You can chew it up and make a spit poultice with it. Spit poultice is amazing, sort of like on the fly remedy where you just chew up the herb and put it directly onto the affected area. I love spit poultices for splinters, especially splinters that are real stubborn. To chew up that plantain, put it on, then I'll take one of the fresh leaves and wrap that around and maybe take a piece of medical tape to hold it in place, and then just let that hang out on a stubborn splinter for a while, and then come back maybe an hour or two, maybe sleep with it on, however, and just give sort of a gentle squeeze, and very often that splinter will just come right out. And so no need to fight with your child or their splinter. You can just kind of poultice with plantain and a spit poultice and give it a little time and then try again, and often it will be a lot easier the next time round. Plantain is another good culinary herb. It's a very mild tasting herb. We can use this in wild foods meal. We can use this in our salad, herbal vinegars. All of those things are delicious with plantain. And again, you can use those leaves that are rolled up into vinegar. Sometimes they'll even roll them up into a spiral and put them in the vinegar like that, and then you can just take them out and use them as a Band-Aid that way. Or for bee stings, anything that gets irritated, puffy. You can get a lot of benefit from plantain. Thanks. Yeah, please.
I love plantain, and animals do too, but recently I came in from working on the ditch, and I'm allergic to one of the grasses here, and I came in and my whole arm was red and swollen and looked really bad. It was incredibly itchy. I made a plantain oil last fall. Just filled the jar with plantain covered in olive oil. It's actually still in the plantain, and it hasn't molded yet, and it's been 9 months now. I rubbed that oil on my arm immediately, and within 5 minutes my arm was like totally cleared out.
Wow.
And you use the narrow leaf plantain, not the brown.
Yeah, I used just the narrow leaf because that's what
And
was
the
right
leaf.
here.
That's what you have, but
That's what you have.
interchangeable. Both of those plantains are interchangeable, and also interchangeable with things like yerba stella, which is another plantain family that's used more like a culinary. It's kind of a fancy culinary herb, but can also be used in much the same way as our other plantain friends. I'm going to pour this off so we have some time to enjoy chai before the end of class. If you have your herbs processed, or whatever herbs you have processed, you could bring up to the bowl, because we'll start.
And one thing with plantain is it really is the herb that is super fast and super effective for bees. So a lot of times, counselors that are going out in the wild with people who potentially could get bee stings and be really affected by them, they just want to know that they have plantain with them. So they'll take a leaf in their pocket when they take anybody on a hike with them, and right on top of that. It's quite amazing how quickly it takes care of bee stings. Really, really fast.
Yeah, it's a great, great herb, and just so many uses, so lovely, good ally to have, and available freely in many pastures.
Mm-hmm.
Come on over.
Great.
It's native to Mexico, especially in Oaxaca. They use it in cooking, but it's also a liver cleanse and detox and antibacterial.
Awesome, thank
Cool,
you. So
thanks.
liver cleanse, detox, antibacterial. All right, we're gonna give the chai a try.
Do you have to store herbal oils in a certain way for them not to go rancid?
Yeah, the herbal oils are the thing that you want to strain off sooner than you would like a tincture. You can leave that stuff in there forever. The herbal oil at the 6-week point, if you're not a lazy herbalist like some people I know, you want to strain that off as sooner is better. And then also, like, some people will wilt the plants. Like comfrey is one that is sort of renowned for getting funky, and so to let that comfrey leaf wilt before it has the opportunity so it doesn't have as much of an opportunity to create mold on top. But yeah, just keeping an eye on it, making sure everything is covered really well, like with the vinegars and tinctures it's very forgiving. And if you have a couple things poking out of the top, no big deal. The oils, no, you have a couple things poking out of the top, they're gonna mold. And so, so a smallmouth container, like I wouldn't make it in a thermos, but I'm just using this as it was a smallmouth jar. So that then what I would do would be take the herbs and make the fairy cushion to like about here, and then make sure that the oil has ample room on top to prevent that sticking out problem. No, don't keep it cold, but you do want to keep it out of the sunlight for the most part. The exception to that would be St. John's wort oil, and also you want to keep it in like a dark, cool. So I have an herb cupboard, and so when I'm making an oil, I put it in there. And something like arnica, like the arnica oil that I made last year, is in there, and it's fine. But then, with the plant material in it and the plantain oil, 9 months later, it's going to still be okay. But something like the comfrey, you're gonna want to use that one. Strain it off more quickly. Okay, so thank you all so much for your good work with all of these beautiful herbs. I'm just adding a few more, and thank Karen and her wonderful cows so much for the beautiful butter that we get to experience here. Oh yeah, bring it. Here we go. Beautiful. Oh, you're also good at cutting.
That would be
Phenomenal
Throw it
here.
in.
throwing it.
Throw it in.
Look at this.
We are having
must have
an
hit a
herb
snack
party. Okay, so we're gonna add our butter in. We have a little bit of butter left from lunch. I'm gonna throw it in the mix. And this butter is like so fluffy and beautiful. It's amazing. Sort of mixing it all up. And this is so wonderful.
Really helps to have this consistency of butter.
Yeah, it's like the fluffy whipped butter feeling. It's so nice and smells so good already. The garlic mingling with all of those herbs is really beautiful. So alfalfa, sort of the queen of the pasture, is another herb that is a fantastic medicinal. And alfalfa is mineral rich. And so it's an herb that could be used as an infusion herb. It's an herb that does not have a strong smell. It has a lot of minerals. We could dry it up and use it as an infusion herb. Some herbalists today have concern around the GMOs associated with alfalfa, and so that's why red clover is one of the 5 main infusion herbs instead of alfalfa. However, nutritionally, alfalfa is a really great herb. This is something that contains vitamin K, and so it's recommended for women in their 3rd trimester of pregnancy to drink alfalfa tea. It has kind of like a hay-ish flavor, and so it blends very nicely with mints and mint family plants to give it a little more lively flavor, and definitely recommended as a nutritive supplement and an infusion herb. Love the alfalfa. And same with the yellow clover. In my pasture in Crawford, a lot of yellow clover comes up. And the tall one, yeah, that wild yellow clover that grows like about to here and has those kind of long, thin yellow flowers. And this is another herb that is very beneficial for the blood. It does have blood thinning properties, so people who are on those kinds of drugs that may contraindicate with blood thinners may not want to use the yellow clover, but it was a favorite of the native people and has a beautiful, almost vanilla kind of flavor to it. And so I really recommend it as a tea, as an infusion, and cold brew, again, really delicious with that tea, with yellow clover.
Did you know when the alfalfa became GMO?
Well, we asked our
Within the
hay.
last decade.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, we have a really old field, so I'm assuming that.
Well,
it's
it's not
crossing.
that, it's that they're crossing, so the old stuff is fine. Like all this alfalfa is not something I planted, it's all been here for decades. But it's susceptible to the pollen that comes floating by, which it does. So
At our hay class, our hay guys, we asked them, weren't concerned about it because the GM alfalfa growers cut their alfalfa before it even goes to flower. So they are not concerned about it cross-pollinating because it does get cut before that would happen.
Some people are concerned about it though, and so just to mention it, we don't have to.
On the roadside and stuff that doesn't get cut, that could pollinate, but the huge fields of it really aren't like sending out 20 acres of GM pollen.
And you know, the GM in alfalfa is to prevent it from having a weevil.
Uh-huh.
And so what
If you
happens
got
with
alfalfa with weevil, then it's good, huh?
Yeah. All right.
No, it's not necessarily good. It just means that it hasn't been, it can be sprayed. It can be sprayed and the alfalfa will survive and the weevil will die. So no, that's not a very good indicator, unfortunately. It's a genetically different plant. Not alfalfa as we know it.
And then Karen mentioned the thistle as a pasture wheat. And again, this we always look to our weeds. What's the medicine? What have you brought for us? What's the lesson that you can teach? And the thistle is a great guardian, not only of the environment, like these pastures that are getting tilled at the wrong time, but also of ourselves. And so we can use the thistle as we can like blend it up in water with water, lemon, apple, and strain it out and make a delicious drink that is like a superfood, really great energizer and also alkalinizer for the blood. Definitely we can always find a use for most of our garden weeds and our pasture weeds, and the thistle root is also considered a delicious edible by some people. Don't get upset with your weeds, make friends with them, find out what their magic is, find out what their lesson is for you, and then as soon as you do that and become friends with them and start using them, you'll find that it's not a problem anymore.
The other weekend when I was over at Sustainable Settings with Stephanie, who was here last time, she said, try this. And it was thistle lemonade, and it was just about the best thing I've ever
Delicious. Delicious.
She sweetened it with maple syrup. And I don't know, there was some combination there of the lemon and the maple and the thistle it was divine.
So good.
Really good. So
But even with an apple, if you want less sweet.
Excuse me?
Dry leaves?
No, fresh.
No, fresh.
We're using fresh. We're using a blender with the fresh water. So maybe you just it's kind of like making an infusion where you're kind of like filling the jar with plant material, filling it with the water, throw in your apple and your lemon. Some people will use the lemon rind and everything. Some people will squeeze the lemon, turn on the blender, and voila. Then you have like this kind of sludgy thing, strain the sludgy thing through here, or even a finer one, and then you have a beautiful drink. And we can make that. Maybe next month we'll make that.
Can you not take out the thorns?
No, and that's the joy of the Vitamix. The Vitamix will just blend those right up,
Blend it all
and then you
up.
strain them right out and call it good. Yeah, so it's a lot easier and less painful.
And it has this, when you blend it up, it has this mucilaginous quality to it, kind of like, what do I want to say, kind of like marshmallow root. And so it's almost like you're drinking a lemonade smoothie. It's just this really interesting texture. It was way good. I loved it.
So I would like to offer everyone the opportunity to try our butter. We have some Breadworks baguettes here. I think there was a little bit of mountain oven bread, but that got mostly eaten. And then we have some gluten-free udis over here. And we can just use our spoon to smear onto our bread. And please try our creation, our co-created herbal butter, and enjoy.
Yeah.